I'm live. Hi, guys. I don't know if my microphone is. How did I do that last time? This is my forever tech drama. I think it's too late to figure out whether it's the microphone or not. Anyway, good. I'm glad that you can hear me. I just don't know whether it's this that's picking me up or the computer. And I don't know how to find out. Somehow I knew last time. But either way, I am very happy. Yes. Okay, good. How does this sound? Can you hear me? Because last time it was really loud. Whatever. All right. Hi, guys. There are 7 of you here. I am looking forward. We're going to do the same thing that we always do. I am going to answer your live questions, specifically focusing on the new section of the book that we're in, which is the emotional part. Of course, it all affects everything else. So we will be talking about every other area of the FUCA diet as well. But I'd love to focus on the way that we are processing and applying the theories of coming back into your body and processing old stuff and old emotion and how that connects with eating, as well as the idea of how to approach emotional eating from the perspective of the FUCA diet, which is essentially just feel and eat. And it doesn't matter what order you do it in. Hello, everybody. So what I think I'm going to do, because the last time that I checked, there are lots. Okay. Last time I checked the Q&As, there weren't very many, so I was going to just start with them and then get to the live ones. But I'm going to do what I usually do, which is take all live questions, and if there's ever a lull, I will go over to the questions that were asked ahead of time. And if not, I'll just answer those that were asked ahead of time at the end. Now, I think what we'll do is, if people want to ever do some live breathe and feel, we will do that next week, because next week is our lighter content week. There's no new reading assignment next week. So I think that would be a good time. There'll probably be more time on the live call. Hi, hello. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Does anybody who is live have any questions so far? And while you're asking your questions, I'm going to go ahead and answer the very first question that was asked ahead of time. So actually, I realized I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Is it Siletta or Siletta? I feel like it's Siletta. That's what I'm going to say for now, but please correct me and spell it out phonetically if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Siletta says, "Hey, Caroline, I have a question about metabolism. When I was growing up, I always heard that thin people were thin because they have a higher metabolism and therefore can eat more food without gaining weight. Is there any merit to this, or is this a simplistic way of explaining body diversity?" This is such a good question. It's a simplistic way of explaining body diversity because that is not always how it works. Now, if we're talking about like a thyroid disorder, the idea is if you're hypothyroid, you have a lower metabolism, which is sometimes why people with hypothyroid can put on weight more easily. I'm trying to think of the right way to like actually explain it without like how to say it without like, you know, it's so the culture demonizes weight gain anyway, but when you have a lower metabolism, like from dieting as well, you're not able to process food, and it's literally your body's way of conserving energy. However, that does not mean, and I want to make sure that I actually say this correctly. And I heard somebody explain it so well, and I might need to find it, but somebody said if you have a metabolism that burns too fast, like you can never keep weight on, that's actually not an efficient metabolism, because even if you're running really, really fast, because you are literally burning off anything that you could survive on if you ever don't have food. So basically, you can have a very functional metabolism where like you check your thyroid and everything's normal and your body temperature is normal and you're not running cold and you're eating enough food and your body, it's like what we're trying to do. We're trying to like give the body what it needs on a food level to come back to a quote unquote normal metabolic rate. That does not mean that that is independent of body weight set theory, if that makes sense. So somebody who genetically has a higher weight set point can have the same metabolic rate as someone in a thinner body, and their set point will still be different. Does that make sense? I feel like I should have written out what I wanted to say so I could say it more succinctly. But basically, there is something to hyperthyroid where your metabolism can be lower because you have lower thyroid hormone, and people can put on weight easier. Or if you have a thyroid change, if you have like a big change in your thyroid, say something happens or you develop hypothyroid, people often gain weight then. And it can be good to go and, check your thyroid levels ever so often. It's important to know how everything in your body is working, because it is, helpful to be medicated for your thyroid because it affects other hormonal things. Nothing stands alone, but you can heal your metabolism, and it's a different thing from body weight set point. And this is making me want to go find, somebody put it so well, and I need to find what that was because I feel like I'm trying to convey the way that it was said and I'm not doing it correctly. But I hope that helps for now. And I'm going to do a little bit of research and try and find the way that it was said. But essentially, they are two independent things. We assume that if your metabolism is like good and, what did you say? A high metabolism, that means you will be thin, and it does not necessarily mean that you will be thin. And we're not all meant to be thin, essentially. And there's a way to look at it, and I think I put this in my book too, that if you reframe it as an efficient metabolism that's wired for your survival, you will have a normal metabolic rate, but you'll still have some meat on your bones just in case we ever get into a famine or a diet. But I will circle back on this in the group because I want to see if I can find the way that somebody once explained it really, really well. Okay, Lauren says, I struggle with finding the balance between not exercising for weight loss, but also I like the look of building muscle. Is that a mindset that can get me in trouble? This is so hard because there's a very fuzzy line between like, I want to be strong and I want to look strong. And if we can be really honest with ourselves about when we're going for looks as opposed to the way we feel, I mean, it is impossible to erase all cultural conditioning in an instant and be like, I'm never, ever going to think about how I look again. It's impossible. So what it really is going to take is just honesty with ourselves about how our fear of what we look like, or our past obsession with what we look like, or our desire to control what we look like is interfering with the way that we see ourselves and treat ourselves and eat and exercise. So there's no like, this is right, this is wrong, unless you give me more specific examples. But try to be honest with yourself and let yourself exercise for the way that you feel and not for the way that you look. However, it's really, really hard to untangle those things, especially in the beginning. And even as you go further along, there are a lot of people who are like, I got really into exercising and I felt so good, but I also realized that I was getting a little bit obsessed about how it made me look and I needed to re-examine that. And there's no way to like flip a switch and be like, great, I turned off that part of my brain. Like, it's just impossible. But it is important and really great that you're asking these questions to yourself. Are you allowing the way that we've been conditioned to think about ourselves and our weight and exercise? Are you allowing that to run the show? And I think that that's really all we can ask ourselves. And then if the answer is yes, then what can we do to maybe, be a little bit kinder to ourselves or focus on how it feels? And I hope that that's helpful. Montana says, Lauren, do you follow Sarah Robles, Robles on Instagram? She's super strong and doesn't have the typical thin, strong look. Plus, she's just amazing. And Lauren said, no, I'll have to look into her, Montana, and so will I. I'm going to do it right now. I don't even remember who you said. Sarah Robles. So Sarah, Robles. And I'm going to follow her. Yeah, it is actually really helpful to follow people in diverse bodies who love to exercise, because people can be really strong but still not look the way that you imagine people who go to the gym to look. And I'm putting everything in quotes there. Yeah, I followed her. Okay, awesome. So Iris said, hi, Carolyn, I'm afraid I make the fuck it diet a diet. I think you just mean you're making the fuck it diet a diet. I find myself doing well one day when I didn't overeat and listen to my body. Those days, I'm very proud of myself and feel good about my body. Yeah, again, this is another, and this is like the slippery slope when people turn intuitive eating into a diet, which is why I spend so much time in the book talking about how hungry you may be and how much you may be hungry for and how much you may feel like you're binging in the beginning and how extreme it can feel, because that is often what this process looks like in the beginning, just on a very physical level. Like, that is what your body needs. And it's also sometimes what your mind needs too, together. Because I feel like without knowing that that's almost always a part of the process, people feel like they're doing it wrong, and therefore it's very quickly turned into a diet. So again, if you're being honest with yourself about this, especially this early in, that's really good. On a certain level, all we really can do is be honest with ourselves and have awareness about why we're doing what we're doing, because that's all we can do always, because there's always going to be things that we do out of habit that we just need to have some more awareness around. Okay, I'm going to keep reading what you said, because you keep, I think, clarifying this question, because you said, but I find myself the next day binging or overeating until I am overfull and sick. I think because I keep thinking in good and bad. I'm not sure how to deal with this. How can I get rid of this black and white thinking? Do I have to try to be less happy when I did quote unquote well? And how do I do that? I'm sorry, I find it difficult to find the right English words and hope my question is clear. Your question is clear, and it is a really good question. And you do not have to be less happy when you did quote unquote well, but to not look at eating less food as well, basically. It's impossible to, it's really hard, because even in the group, people are like, I didn't finish my ice cream. Like, how amazing is that? And it is amazing, because it is a very distinct shift in our relationship to food, in the way that we relate to our appetites, the way that we relate to food, the power that food has over us. And it's a sign that people are becoming instinctively more intuitive and less ruled by food, and that binges are shifting in a way where we just don't have the same pull with food. So it's really helpful to notice those changes and to talk about those changes and to take note of it and be like, wow, this is such a difference. However, we still run the risk then of being like, what this means is less food is better. And that is an unhelpful thing to believe, because inevitably day to day to day, we have different levels of hunger. And so if we have these conditions on what's a good day on the fuck diet, that will get in the way. And it makes sense that when you're like, yes, I'm doing this right, this is working, that you almost get into like, well, this better keep working like this, and I better not eat differently or more than this tomorrow. And that is mental restriction and can become a binge. So I think it's about really changing the mental dialogue. If you find yourself saying, good, this is going the way it's supposed to be going, or this is right, remind yourself there actually is no perfect day on the fuck diet. Every day is supposed to be different. We are hungrier and less hungry depending on a million different hormonal factors, and other factors. And that, darn it, I forget the other thing I was going to say. And that it's genuinely allowed to look different. And also, like, different triggers will come up, different foods will come up, and you'll say, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten this food in such a long time. And you'll kind of like go through the process again with this new food. So I also don't know how far you are into the journey, but the first couple months, if not first year, it feels like a really erratic experience. It is not linear. People have a week where they're like, wow, I'm not obsessed with food at all. And then all of a sudden they're like, why am I eating so much again? And it's like, because you're a human and because we have different appetites and different experiences with food, and you're working through so much mentally too. It's just impossible to jump to a completely quote unquote normal relationship with food. So I think just reminding yourself of that it's not supposed to look any certain way, it's allowed to change from day to day, will get you out of that black and white, good, bad cycle, which is essentially like the yo-yo of the binge repent. And also help remind you that nothing is going wrong if you do have a different experience from day to day, which won't then make you reactive and nervous about it. I hope that that's helpful. It really is just being aware of the way you're talking to yourself. If you're like, yes, this is going well, be like, well, maybe I need to reframe that and realize that it might change tomorrow, and that's okay. But again, that's one of those things that, like, this is becoming a theme, I feel like, today, where it's about awareness and a willingness to be honest with yourself about the way your brain is working in relation to how you're eating and how you're exercising and the way that you're looking at your body. He said, that's really helpful. Thank you. I'll try and reframe. And that's we haven't officially gotten there yet, but for the people who have read the whole book, the brain dump, which is just a stream of consciousness, is a really, really helpful way to see the way that your brain is working and the way that you're talking to yourself and the thoughts that you have and the subconscious thoughts that you have and the beliefs that you have. So that's why I think it can be so illuminating to be like, I keep saying that I'm not doing this right, or I keep saying that I had such a good day. And it can help you be aware of the way that you're talking to yourself to allow yourself to reframe. Lauren said, one of my biggest struggles is feeling okay with the different levels of hunger. Yes. And I think that that's a huge thing to remind yourself of. It is okay if you're not really very hungry compared to how you usually are one day. And the issue is, and this is how we just automatically apply diet culture to it, is we think, oh my God, yes, this is the way it's supposed to be. And it's not necessarily how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be hungry. We're allowed to be hungry. Like, it is normal. It is a sign of being alive, of having a functioning metabolism, honestly. And when your metabolism isn't functioning, that's when you aren't as hungry. And that doesn't mean that you need to worry when you aren't, but to reframe that and realize that really there's nothing wrong. And there's nothing wrong with being really hungry and allowing yourself to eat. Um, that's just a really important thing to remember. And I had to reframe all of the time in the beginning for the first like 2 years to be like, I'm really hungry. And that's okay. That is okay. That's like normal and being alive. And Lauren also said this journey has a ton of peaks and valleys. Shell said, rethinking we're doing so well on the fuck it diet. I didn't eat all the ice cream. Wow, that makes so much sense. I'm definitely doing that. And it's so classically me, black and white. Brain dump topic. Yeah, that totally is. It makes sense again, right? Because one of the things, and even one of the ways that I like market my website is that dieting makes you fixated on food. So because we're all like, why am I so obsessed with food? And that's such a pain point. And it's true. Like, I'm not lying. It does make you more fixated on food. But because we're all coming from this fat phobic and diet culture lens of being fixated on food is bad. There's something wrong with me. It's going to make me gain weight. It has made me gain weight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is the pain point with dieting that isn't like, I mean, everything is about weight underneath. Like, that's why we're so afraid of being fixated on food. But that is the thing that I say, like, this is something that I can help you with. This is something that the Fuck It Diet can help you with. It'll help you not be so fixated on food. And it's true. And it's important to share those stories. It's important to notice those changes. But we run the risk of making the goal to not care about food at all, which is weirdly diet culture-y too. Like, the goal isn't to not like food, to not eat food, to not be hungry. None of those things are the goal. And so that's another thing. I mean, I say that in the book. I'm like, just so you know, we're not trying to get to a point where we don't care about food, where we don't eat, where we aren't hungry, where we don't eat whatever we want, you know? But so if you can understand what I'm talking about, there's like a balance of explaining why both of those things are important to be aware of. Does that make sense? Okay. Nancy says, you've hit on a point I'm struggling with, is the difference between mental restriction and intuitive eating. Am I not eating because of the latter or the former? Reframing and checking in is a great approach. Yeah, I mean, I think just being honest with ourselves that it is so ingrained to think that eating less and being less hungry and stopping like before we're full is a good thing. Like, that's what we just have soaked in from our culture, from all the millions of diets that we've gone on, and from the idea of what intuitive eating is from like this diet culture weight loss lens. And that most likely for a while, that will be a script in our minds that we need to constantly be aware of, because it's going to crop up and it's going to confuse you. And it is very subtle mental restriction, but it will potentially get in the way if we don't have any awareness around it. Ira said, and it's nice to know it takes a few months or years to learn to reframe our brains. Absolutely. And that's not to say that we won't feel, relief and peace and big shifts. But I think that shifts happen. There are a couple that happen. I think you can have a big shift, but that doesn't mean that you're never going to have these thoughts again, or that you've dealt with everything, or that, old habits won't try to pop up again. But I think that things really do shift first on a physical level, which does help your brain, but that doesn't mean, and it actually helps like on a hormonal level, the food fixation, but there are still subconscious beliefs and thoughts that we do need to address that will also kind of pop up along the way, which is why the physical part comes first, because that does actually help the mental fixation on food, then emotional, then the mental part to be like, great. So maybe by now, if you've been doing this for a couple of weeks, you have a slight shift in the mental, but there's still other stuff that we need to address. Okay, I'm going to go back to answering questions that were asked ahead of time. So Elizabeth says, actually no. Molly says, My question is about the breathe and feel. When do we do this? Once a day or just when you feel you need to? Not sure what I need to feel to do this. Also, why do we feel the pain in the body? Why do we concentrate on it rather than try and let it go? Sorry if you've explained this, but I have listened to the emotional part 3 times and I'm still not sure. Okay, so I'm going to clarify that there is an overlap between physical sensation in the body and emotions in the body, which actually, when you get down to what an emotion actually is, it just is physical sensation in the body. Because we avoid our bodies, we avoid everything that our bodies feel like. So we avoid like actual physical like joint pain and stomach pain and shoulder pain and neck pain. And we also avoid emotional sensations, what they feel like, because it feels often uncomfortable. But emotions really do just manifest as physical sensations in the body. But we so rarely actually feel it that we don't always realize that that's really all that they manifest as. Now, they also can be really strong and can bring up thoughts and mental pain, and which is why it's more all consuming than just like a physical knee pain or something. But the breathe and feel is meant to anchor you into whatever your body is feeling, whether that is plain physical pain like a stomach ache or a headache or any other kind of actual physical pain or sensation. It doesn't even have to be pain. It can be like, I feel an itch in my leg. This is what it feels like. I feel like tightness here. So it doesn't have to just be pain. It can be any sensation that's quote unquote good or bad. But the breathe and feel also allows you, if what you are experiencing in the moment happens to be attached to an emotion or part of an emotion, it allows, if that's the most intense sensation in your body, that is what you're allowed to focus on too. And what I have found is that no matter what you are focusing on in the breathe and feel, no matter what the most intense sensation in your body is, whether it's purely physical or emotional, manifesting as physical, whatever, turning, prickling, tightness, that almost always it will morph and move as you breathe into it and allow yourself to feel it, which is a really amazing thing to notice, because one of our kind of subconscious beliefs that we all tend to feel and fear is that this pain will never go away, or if I let myself feel it, it's just going to take over and it's going to last forever. And even when it's physical pain, it's really amazing to see how it does really morph and change, and that everything is moving and in flux. So that's one of the cool things about breathe and feel, is to just notice that every time you do it. The second thing is it's just a very short anchor into letting yourself feel whatever there is to feel in your body, and a bridge into coming back into your body in the first place with a focus. And also allowing you to, if it is emotional pain or any sort of emotion that is the most intense sensation in your body at that time, it allows you to focus on the sensation of it, which is more manageable for some people. Notice how it morphs and changes, even if it doesn't completely go away, though this often is a really good method for processing a little bit of it and feeling a little bit of relief or release during or after. But basically, this is meant to be a very, 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 very basic way of beginning to reintegrate into your body and be willing to feel things that we either aren't even aware are there, or that we are resistant to feeling, and seeing how it can offer relief to just feel. Now your question is, when do we do this? You can tack it onto your lie down. You can make it part of your lie down. Like you can make it 5 minutes of the 10-minute lie down. You can tack it onto the end and make it the last 5 minutes of your 10-minute lie down. So it's a 15-minute lie down. You can do it for 1 minute if you're feeling really overwhelmed and you're feeling really stressed out, and you happen to remember that coming back into your body and feeling, as opposed to just staying up in your head and worrying, might be helpful. That's why at the end of the tool, I say you can integrate breathe and feel into your everyday life. I sometimes remember to do this, and I often don't. But if I go through a really stressful experience, if I'm really upset or angry or overwhelmed by something, or any sort of like strong emotion is happening, if I'm in some sort of dialogue with someone, it's really hard to remember to drop into your body and to feel everything. But sometimes I actually do. And just remembering that we are conditioned, or we have conditioned ourselves to like not want to feel what's going on. And there is so much power in trying to feel what's happening as it's happening. A lot easier said than done. It takes a lot of practice. Maybe we'll never, ever master it in the moment. If we can do it in real time, that's amazing. And it actually leads to a lot of clarity and a lot less buildup. If we can't feel it in real time while things are happening, while trauma is happening, while scary, stressful, angering, saddening situations are happening, just understanding that you will probably, if not definitely, store that emotion and need to feel it later so it doesn't run the show. That's another thing to just keep in mind. And this is a tool for processing stuff later. There's no perfect way of employing this. I do recommend in the book that actually, that's a really good question. I think it's something that you can practice daily. It's just 5 minutes. You can also practice it for 30 seconds, like anytime. But I think having that be something that you always are aware of, whether you're in your body or not, and inevitably we will forget this. And I go weeks forgetting and then being like, oh yeah, remember how I'm supposed to be in my body and actually feeling and breathing. And I go through phases. Like when I was learning about all this, all I did was think about, am I grounded? Am I grounded? Am I in my body? And then when it becomes more second nature, which it actually is pretty second nature to me now, though, of course, I go through moments where I'm like, wow, I have not been breathing or feeling or in my body for the past week. When things become second nature, you don't have to think about them and apply them all the time, but that doesn't mean that you won't like go through periods where you forget things and have to relearn things and reapply things. I don't know that I'm really answering your question of when do we do this, but basically you can do it every day to practice it. You can do it once a week if that's all you have time for. And you can also see how in tiny, tiny little chunks, literally even 30 seconds, you can apply this in your daily life. If you're getting overwhelmed, getting stressed, can you just see what it feels like in your body and see what that experience is like and see how that reintegrates you with basically the other thing that I forgot to say is we are so afraid of what will happen to us if we feel our emotions. And this is another way to kind of condition ourselves and teach ourselves that it's perfectly safe. Though, again, and I do say this in the book, if it does not feel safe at all, if it feels really, really, really out of control, I do recommend that you find a trauma-informed therapist who can help guide you through all of this. I mean, I talk about trauma and PTSD in the book, but there are extreme cases of it where it really is life-altering, and you need more support. So just always keep that in mind. But at the same time, this is basic enough to the idea of being able to breathe and being able to just feel what your body feels like is a safe enough thing to try, which is why I've made it this basic. I hope that was helpful. Of course, want to continue this conversation in the group if you have more questions about this, but I hope that was clarifying. Let me find what the last comment was. So Lauren said, I always use food to chase the feeling to get grounded, but I think I'm using, I am using food can backfire and turns into numbing out. Can you further explain using food to feel grounded in your body? Yes. Not eating inherently is ungrounding, and eating is grounding. You're literally bringing food and weight into your body. You're staying alive. The reason, I mean, I've heard people who are anorexic say that they don't like the feeling of eating because it makes them have to feel their body, and they don't want to have to feel their body at all. So just theoretically thinking about that and thinking about how eating is allowing us to kind of like come back down into our body, I think that that's fascinating, first of all. Also, just if you think about it energetically, not eating can make you feel lightheaded. It can make me feel kind of like if I'm going through kind of like a stressful time and therefore I'm not hungry and not thinking about eating, I'm very ungrounded. I'm very scattered. Like the feeling of drinking too much coffee and forgetting to eat, like that's a very ungrounded feeling. And that food can be helpful in grounding and calming and genuinely bringing you into your body, genuinely making you feel your stomach with food in it. So that's one way. But food can also be used to numb out. However, I think that there's always an inherent problem with villainizing food as a way to comfort, because it is meant to be comforting. We are meant to get relief and calm, and there's a switch in our hormones in a good way when we eat, because we are being rewarded for eating because we need to eat to stay alive. So I think villainizing eating for comfort and villainizing eating, emotional eating, or villainizing any sort of eating to numb out is inherently going to backfire, because it very quickly mimics diet mentality, and that this is wrong and I shouldn't be doing this and I shouldn't be feeling comfort. And it is a legitimate way to comfort yourself. And which is why in the book I say, please don't focus on not using food. Please just focus on adding in a way to ground yourself without food, meaning you can ground yourself with food and then find other ways to come back into your body. So that's either just doing the breathe and feel, feeling your body in space, going for a walk, anything that makes you feel that you can feel your body. Yoga is grounding for some people if you're doing it, the way yoga was intended to be done. And exercise can be grounding for people, but exercise can also be a way to try and not feel. So just being aware of when am I trying to feel less is helpful. And food is really, really hard to categorize this way because of what I just said, because it's not a normal vice. It's a necessary survival piece of nourishing our body and our emotions. Like, we are meant to connect with food and love food and feel good from food. And we are meant to be fixated on it if we've been in any sort of famine/diet. So that is why it's so important not to villainize. And that's why it's so important to allow yourself to eat to numb out if that's what you're used to, but to also bring new ways of processing emotion and grounding into your life. So maybe it can have more of a balanced relationship with each other. But also the other thing is that when you are fed and when you are not in a food deprived state, when you're not in a state where food has all this power and you've been hungry for decades and you're going through the process, when you're not in this food fixated mode, food does not have the same power to numb you out as it does when you're deprived of food. So understanding that emotional eating, the more you go through this process, the less power emotional eating inherently will have, even if you didn't do any of the breathe and feel stuff. But then to add the breathe and feel or any other way to come back into your body and feel what it feels like to be a human will only help to give you more coping mechanisms. So I hope that that is a helpful way to look at it and a helpful perspective. Montana said, Natalie DeTeal, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, asked me to type this into the live chat for her. She can't comment via her phone, but is watching. Oh, Montana, thank you for doing this. She says, I feel like I am yo-yoing between feeling neutral with food and thinking my metabolism is healing. And then I feel panic, like my body is so much bigger and afraid my metabolism will never heal. How will I know when my metabolism is healed? So this is one of the things that I have addressed a couple times before the book came out and then in the book as well. Thinking, how do I know when my metabolism is healed, is essentially unhelpful, because no matter what, no matter whether your metabolism needs to be healed with food or is already healed with food, you will always need to eat to hunger. So no matter what, no matter whether you're starving and fixated on food because you've been dieting for years or decades and you need to eat, and that's all part of the process of healing the body, healing the metabolism, teaching your body that there's enough food and learning to listen to your hunger and going through the refeeding process, or whether you've already done that and now you're just living your life, eating is essential. And learning to eat when you're hungry and not judge the amount of food that you eat is essential. So the answer is, it doesn't matter whether your metabolism is healed. And that's also not true. Obviously, we want to support our body in any way that we can. And basically, it's not a linear process. So I was going to say, when you're not as fixated on food, that's a sign that your body is very physically more comfortable and not as in that like high ghrelin famine food fixation mode. But it's not as simple as that. It's a longer process. So to give you like an exact like time period or exact sort of symptom is maybe just going to get in your way. And you're going to be like, well, my metabolism is healed, I shouldn't still be really hungry. And again, that's what we were talking about earlier, where we're assuming the fuck it diet to like heal us of our hunger. And that's not what happens. So the sign of a functioning metabolism is hunger, and the sign of a healing metabolism is hunger. So either way, eating is a good idea. And I hope that that's helpful. And I know that that might be an annoying answer because we're searching for something so much more specific and so much more of a like, I just need to do this and then everything's going to shift and change. And it's a little bit more subtle than that, but the answer is always eating. And I hope that that's helpful. Montana, I see. So Montana, you sent what Natalie was saying, but then you sent some more things, but I don't see the one of that. I see 2, 3, and 4. So you might have to send one again, if that makes sense. So Lauren said, I have never heard that before. Interesting about how anorexics don't like the feeling of food in their body. I used to do some like grounding visualizations, and I was doing this workshop. I was leading a workshop, and I was trying to have people imagine light and energy coming into their body and all the way down through their legs and down into the earth. And there was somebody who said that they genuinely couldn't even imagine. They couldn't even imagine in their mind's eye coming below their neck. And they couldn't feel anything down here, and they couldn't even imagine it. And then in the next comment, they said, I'm recovering from anorexia and, I don't like feeling my body. And it was something that I already had understood, like that dynamic and that the theory that, eating issues in many ways come from an unwillingness to be fully integrated into our bodies, and that it's uncomfortable, and that not eating can be a way to continue to avoid feeling. But that was just because most people were like, well, it was hard at some points. But she was like, I can't even imagine it. And I also don't want to. And I thought it was really fascinating. Natalie said that my response to your question was super, super helpful. I'm so glad. I understand the question. It's a very common question. People ask it all of the time, and it's such a simple answer. And saying that it doesn't matter isn't true, but saying that you don't need to figure it out, that just listening to your body is enough. So Montana, I'm seeing 2-3. After working through some things with a therapist, she does EMDR and something called brain spotting, which is basically EMDR light. Now I'm able to start doing more of these grounding activities. I actually love doing the breathe and feel tool, which is so big for me. And I wanted to let people know that being afraid to inhabit your body is not necessarily permanent. Okay, so I don't know if I'm missing a first text there, but basically Montana, and I worked with Montana in Fucketeer Academy, and I remember her saying that she had a lot of trauma that made the breathe and feel, and that made the idea of coming back into her body really, really, really scary and really, really difficult, and something that was essentially like genuinely affecting her in big ways and making the emotional part significantly harder than it is for some other people. So if you feel the same way, that's what I mean by you may need, because EMDR is a way of processing trauma, and it can be really, really amazing to have a therapist who's informed, who's trauma informed, who can like hold your hand, not physically, but who can actually guide you through the process. It's actually very similar to having a severe eating disorder and needing help to get to a place where you can do the fuck it diet, and having severe PTSD and needing help to get to a place where you can do the fuck it diet. This is like that's why I have to say this is for chronic dieters. And I think everybody in this world is a little bit traumatized in some way. We all are avoiding something. But if it's to the next level of PTSD, you need more help, basically. And that it doesn't negate this. Like, this still will be helpful in the future and going forward, but that you may need more help before you can start to do it on your own. So thank you for sharing that, Montana. And I don't know if I missed the first thing, but I feel like, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to go and start answering the questions that have been asked before. So Elizabeth says, my question is about the lie down. I love to nap and to try to do one, meaning a nap, when I'm home with the kids. Is napping the same thing as a lie down, or is the lie down more about clearing your head and separate from sleep? Great question. Really, really good question. They are different, but they are both really good and really helpful, and that there is overlap. So when people say, every time I try to do the lie down, I fall asleep, am I not doing it right? And the answer is, if you're falling asleep, then you need to sleep. Then sleeping is going to be more helpful for you than the lie down, because that's like such a basic need, having enough sleep. So sleeping is so great, though it is different from sort of like lying in savasana. Though they're both really good and they're both really healing, and there's a huge overlap in the way that they heal you. There is like something to being flat, and that there's like sort of like an energetic like reset that happens according to some people, and also according to savasana from yoga. But basically they're both good. And if you do either a nap or the lie down in a day, you're doing really, really well. So you don't need to put any hard rules on the lie down, or how you use it, or whether you have to do it in addition to the nap. If there's a day where you take a nap and then later in the day you're like, I'm going to do my 10-minute lie down, that's amazing. If you do one or the other, that's amazing too. So I'm not going to put any rules on that. It really is about what can you do and what can you bring into your life in a way that actually feels doable and doesn't feel overwhelming. I think that's the most important and effective way to actually use the tools. Shannon said, my question is about self-discipline. I'm finding that I know certain things will make me feel better. For example, I'm drinking too much coffee and having a hard time telling myself no. I also feel better when I go to bed early and wake up early, but I tend to not do that. Caffeine is a major reason why. When I do wake up early, I feel accomplished and able to prepare my day, which is important to me. I'm frustrated by why I'm sabotaging myself and creating drama. It's a really good question. I think it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, because the more you take rules off of food, the less caffeine will be a helpful and effective vice. And I've heard this I experienced this personally, and I've heard many people talk about extreme caffeine addiction. It was like their way to get through the day. And it was also something that they used, whether consciously or subconsciously, to be less hungry or to replace a snack and give them energy. I used to do this all of the time in the afternoon, and many people do. I drank a lot of caffeine. And I found that the more I fed myself and went through the refeeding process and went through the fuck it diet, I naturally was more interested in food than over caffeinating. Molly is here. And guys, today is the day that I adopted her last year. Hi, Molly. She looks so mad. Anyway, so it is possible that the more you refeed and the more you allow snacks to actually be the thing that gets you through the day and gives you energy when you're hungry, you may feel less of a pull towards over caffeinating. I still drink a quad shot cappuccino every morning, but I really have a different relationship with caffeine now. I really don't want it in the afternoon. And that was I used to be like, I need to get a coffee, but it was very diet mentality. It was very like, I need to like feel less hunger and like have energy to like get through the day. And I really used it as a diet tool. And I had no idea that I was, I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. So that might be helpful as you go forward. But the sleep caffeine thing is definitely just like a cycle that we get into, because when you sleep less, you feel like you need more caffeine, and then you still sleep less because you're having caffeine late in the day. And so I don't know what the best way is to bust out of that cycle. It's hard, but I think starting with less caffeine, and I'm not an advocate for cutting out caffeine. I tried to cut out caffeine a couple years into my fuck it diet, wondering if it was going to cure me of all of my lingering hormonal problems. It didn't. And it also made me genuinely depressed for like 3 months. I went through like a very serious withdrawal process. And then on the other side, I was like, I'm not even happier. And so I started drinking caffeine again. But drinking a little bit less so you can sleep better at night may be helpful. And it is about coming back into the body and feeling what it feels like. And that can help guide intuition. But I do think that as you go through the process, it might make it a little bit easier to drink a little bit less caffeine, because you will be nourished in more real and nourishing ways. And eating also helps sleep too. So it might work itself out. I forget how far you are into this process, but it could help all by itself. And I hope that that's helpful, but I don't know if it is. But if you're in the very beginning, you may see your relationship to caffeine change a little bit the more you're actually allowed to eat and not replacing food with caffeine. Zoe says, my question is about fitness. I've always exercised, but now through the Fuckatite, I see it's all been about weight loss and shape change rather than joyful movement. We have a gym where I work, and I feel I want to fully immerse myself in gentle movement for a while, yoga and walks. So my question is, how do I handle the questions? Questions from the coworkers who I've worked out with for years. I may go back to the gym and I may not. I'm enjoying no stress around exercise. A few tips on responding to the inevitable interest would be great. You could say, I'm always a fan of saying the truth in a soft way that doesn't put people on guard, because they really can't argue with something that you feel will be helpful to you. So you could say, I'm just looking for a different way of exercising. I want to see what I feel like if I do this different kind of movement. You could lie. You could say, I've hurt my knee or something, and so I have to exercise in a different way, and I'm trying it out, and this is just what I need to do for now. And then, down the line, you can say, I actually really enjoy this more. Not everybody feels comfortable saying this, but saying I had a unhealthy relationship with exercise, and so I'm forcing myself to do things that are a little bit more gentle. That can be, it's really hard to argue with that. Not everybody feels comfortable sharing that, but it can really, pulling the eating disorder card should really shut people up. It doesn't always, but it often does. Also with food stuff, saying, you know what, I basically had an eating disorder, so I'm trying to learn to eat normally, and I need you to stop bothering me. Not easy, and you don't have to say it that aggressively either, but either some version of the truth or some little white lie about being over-exercised and your body actually isn't feeling good and you need to go to something a little bit more light for a bit. Or pulling the eating disorder card. This is another thing that you can bring up in the group, and I'm sure that I always am impressed with people's responses. The kinds of things that they have been saying to people can be really helpful to see what other people are saying. She said, another thought and question I have is around nutrition. I keep hearing gentle nutrition. Is this something that comes into play after the refeed? Also, I'm still fully immersed in the refeed, but I do have moments of panic when I wonder, will I eat this way forever? A, you will not eat that way forever. B, gentle nutrition is something that it's like an eating disorder. An intuitive eating. I was thinking of ED and then I was thinking of IE and I mixed them up. It's an intuitive eating principle. It's the last intuitive eating principle for a reason, but it is something that can trigger some people and they're like, oh no, so I'm supposed to be gently being nutritious. I have found through the Fuck It diet that does happen naturally. Plus, we are all people who come from a nutrition conscious place, right? So that's kind of why we were dieting in the first place. So it's not like we don't know anything about fruits and vegetables, and we don't know anything about what might be a nourishing and nutritious way to add, variety to your diet. So it's not like we need education there. We need to let go of the rules and allow our body to dictate when we're ready to add in another vegetable or something. The idea of gentle nutrition is to just begin to add in things that we may be lacking, maybe add in a fruit, add in a vegetable. Do we have protein and starch and fiber? It's that simple, but I genuinely don't think it's a necessary thing to worry about because it will happen naturally. It can be a very triggering thing for people to hear because they think, oh no, I really am supposed to be eating a certain way, which is not true. And it's something that we as dieters know too much about. So overthinking that is totally unhelpful. What we need to do is allow the things that we're afraid of and naturally get to a place where we crave variety, and that's all you need to worry about. Annie says, I'm struggling with the breathe and feel, like on a basic level. When you say most intense sensation, do you have examples? By sensation, do we mean emotion or like tired or bloated? I'm sorry, I'm pretty in touch with my emotions, but I'm just not sure what type of sensation I'm looking for. I hope that my answer earlier was helpful here, because I do think that it needed a little bit of clarity. And I hope that my answer to Molly gave that clarity. But for an example, like for instance, right now, I'm just trying to find what the most intense sensation in my body is. It's probably like my feet are falling asleep right now. So like just feeling that. And what shape does it feel like? It's kind of like pulsing, like buzzing a little bit. And it's white and it's like fuzzy. And it's like a intensity of like a 3. It's not that intense. So yeah, bloating, like often I'm like, my like leg is twitching. Or I'll be like, I have like a little bit of a tension headache right here. And like you just feel what it feels like. And like what shape is it? How intense is it? Really, it's only like a 2. I don't have a lot of pain right now. But what can also then come up, emotions can come up if that is the thing that wants to be felt, but not always. Sometimes it's just physical sensation. And this is really about beginning to reintegrate into your body and feel things that we otherwise wouldn't even notice were happening, and to like begin the reintegration and re-embodiment process that we so rarely think about. And that is the point. And I hope that that was helpful. Hold on. Stop. Okay. All right. Just a package delivered. Everything's fine. I just didn't know if I had to tell someone to go away or not. Kathleen says, Shannon, I would also like to hear about self-discipline. So Shannon asked about the caffeine and bed thing. I have an all or nothing mentality with so many things: going to bed on time, housekeeping, self-care, exercise. And Zoe, who asked about gentle nutrition, she would also like to hear about gentle nutrition. I tried implementing it when I was doing intuitive eating, and it sent me back into good food, bad food diet mentality. Yep, that's why I don't talk about gentle nutrition. I think that it is triggering to people who are not ready for it, and it is unnecessary for people who are, because the body just genuinely craves gentle nutrition when you don't have rules anymore, and once you've gone through a more extreme refeeding process. So the other thing that I just want to say about the idea of self-discipline, and again, depending on whether people are super type A or are not, and the way that they approach everything. In the beginning of my fuck it diet, I did not think about, I didn't at all think about changing my relationship to caffeine, coffee, or alcohol. And I think I drank a lot of both in the beginning. I just didn't think about it or worry about it. And all I did was focus on listening to my hunger, feeding myself a lot of food, going through that process, and coming back into my body and really trying to figure out what felt good in my body, what food felt good to eat, what I craved, and like getting really, like I really was interested in like in the intuition of cravings and the intuition of the body, and figuring out how it feels, and can I get to a place where I just want to feel good in the least perfectionistic way possible. Very naturally, through the years, she's just upside down. Very naturally through the years, my relationship to caffeine changed a lot. I also did do my cutting out caffeine for 6 months thing that I was like, I hate this. And I eventually went back. But that was like a few years into the fuck it diet. And it was not about weight. It was about like do I have like adrenal issues because of caffeine? I don't think that I did, but it was an experiment. But my relationship to caffeine changed even before then. I stopped wanting caffeine in the afternoon, and I used to use caffeine in the afternoon as like again, like I said, like a diet thing. And my relationship to alcohol changed too. I drink sometimes. I really feel that my body cannot handle it like other people can. Like, I think this is the way some people feel about certain different foods, where they're like, I love cheese or I love bread, but I really feel horrible after I eat it. So I just, to take care of myself, I don't tend to eat it that much. That's not what I'm saying for me, but some people feel that way. And it's possible to integrate that with the Fuck It diet. In fact, I think the Fuck It diet is really good for getting to a place where, like, look, there's no rule around this, but I just, based on the way I feel after I eat certain foods, I've learned that my body can't handle X very well. That is how I felt for a really long time the past couple of years about alcohol. And, I can handle it a little bit better now, actually. In fact, I went out to happy hour yesterday with my friend, and I wish that I hadn't, but I'm fine. But my relationship with both of those things changed based on wanting to feel nourished and good and rested and fed, and in a way where it's like I experiment with things sometimes. I don't want you to do this right now. It's going to be loud. And there's no way of being perfectionistic about it, but it's just about learning to live in your body and take care of your body in whatever way makes sense at the time. I'm sorry I took that away from you. Lauren said, I think the reason your book is so different and more relatable than intuitive eating is you made things so clear and easy to understand. Oh, thank you. I'm really glad. I mean, I literally wrote the book in response to my incorrect application of intuitive eating. That really is like, I'm trying to talk to the people who have either made the mistakes that I made with intuitive eating, or who are about to make the mistakes that I made with intuitive eating, like potentially turning the Fuck It diet into a similar thing. Kate says, I'm type A. Lisa said, in the very beginning of your Fuck It diet journey, about how many times would you say you do the breathe and feel exercise in any given day on average, and or the lie down? So in the beginning of my Fuck It diet journey, I did not, I had yet to, a couple years into my Fuck It diet, did I start to really explore the emotional part, both for myself and also for people who I was doing workshops with, who were like, but what about emotional eating? And I was like, I had the same teaching that I have now, but I didn't have a tool. Just want to showcase. Okay, well, you can't really see her anyway. Didn't have a tool. I did a lot of different energy work trainings, in addition to yoga teacher training last year, which is my, this is people understand what yoga is. They don't understand what these other things are. But what it really came down to, and what I really eventually understood, is all of the fancy methods that people use for body work. Now, I believe in a lot of stuff. I believe that there are many ways to do many things. There are many different foods that you can eat to get vitamin C, and there are very many different body work things you can do to get back into your body and to move things that are stuck. There's no one path. That's why so many different things exist. But it really all came down to, are you willing to be in your body and feel what we've been unwilling to feel, which is why I made it that basic in the book. I, before the Fuck It diet, was obsessed with feeling. I thought I was going to heal my eating through feeling. This is before the Fuck It diet. This is before I understood how afraid we are of hunger and how afraid we are of gaining weight and all of this stuff. And I think, I don't know how many people do this too, but my idea was, if I could heal my emotional eating, I would, heal myself, and I would heal my relationship to food. Didn't understand how much restriction, mental restriction, physical restriction, mental restriction was affecting my appetite, and how much eating a lot of food is good and helpful and healing. So before the Fuck It diet, I was trying to heal my eating through feeling all of my emotions. So I kind of did a lot of not all, there's always more to feel, guys. There's always more trauma to uncover. But I was pretty comfortable feeling my emotions before the Fuck It diet. I also went to school for acting. I also had all of this audition anxiety, and all of the classes I went to about audition anxiety was feel the panic, because that's how it moves. So this is like the way that my brain worked about emotions beforehand. However, I was trying to feel my emotions so I didn't want to eat, which inherently is a diet, and backfired for all of the many reasons that I've already explained and the book talks about. So when going into the Fuck It diet, I already was like, well, it's also really important to feel your emotions, but the way to not make that a diet is to not have to feel your emotions instead of eating, that you can do both, and they can be separate or they can be at the same time, and it doesn't matter. And then I did all of these, like a couple years into it, I started training with different people who did different versions of energy work, because I wanted something really, really simple to share with people I did workshops with in my courses and workshops and all of these things. But what I ran into were these like culty people, essentially, who wanted me to like be a practitioner of their thing. And I was like, this is gross and weird and kind of creepy. And all they're really doing is trying to get people to feel, and they're just branding it, basically. So I said goodbye to that, except for Alexis, who I really genuinely love. And she's the one who really taught me about grounding, my friend, who I talk about in the book, who I really, really love. And that is what morphed into what we have today. So in the process then of writing the book and trying to simplify things in a way that were the distillation of what I had been teaching all of these years in the most basic way, is how we got to the lie down, which is a combination of us needing to rest more, and another way to like that. It is like an energy work principle of like, it's good for your energy system to do the lying flat, and it's also a yoga thing of like integrating the practice at the end, which is why it's supposed to be so important. And when people like skip it, it's like, don't do that. But also together with the rest thing of like, you're allowed to take a rest. And it's a slight version. It's a little bit of a meditation. It's a very, very easy, actionable thing. There's something that needs to happen or not happen. And then the breathe and feel was the most basic version of any sort of energy work. And then the brain dump was like the mental way to do it. There are all ways to like come back to your body and to come back to what is actually real and actually happening. Becca said, oh my God, the cults are robbing people of tons of money by promising they know the only way to lose. What does that say? SW2? I don't know what that means. I don't know if you're saying lose weight. Oh yeah, that's what I thought. To lose weight. Yeah, I know. Well, so a culty mentality is very human, to be like, I need somebody to tell me exactly what to do. And it's also a very it's like a money thing. People are like, I'm branding. This is like, I'm going to like create a pyramid scheme where like I teach these people to do this work. And then I just was creeped out by especially one person that I thought I trusted, but then I didn't. Lisa said, I see. That was a lovely in-depth explanation. Exactly what I was asking for. Thank you. You're welcome. I hope that it was helpful. Yeah, I really came to all of the pieces of the Fuck It diet and all of the most helpful ways to teach it through the years. It's been 7 years. I started writing the book, I think 3 years ago. So I was at that point 3 years ago, I was like, oh, I had just cut ties with the person that I'm talking about, who doesn't even like, it's a longer story. I actually at that point was so angry about it that I wrote this like whole thing about it in the book without saying her name. And then I took it out because it was just like kind of besides the point. I was trying to like tie it in with a culty thing, but it just was like a tangent. So at that point, 3 years ago, I was like, okay, I think it can be simpler than this. Like what is the basic thing that I do, that I've learned to do myself, that all of these different teachers and people are trying to teach people to do, on a basic way of reintegrating into your body? Like, what is the most basic first couple steps to do that in the most simple way, without saying like, oh, the only way to learn how to come back into your body is to join my Fuck It Diet book club. And in there, I will guide you through the very essential, what are they like? There's something that someone used to call it. They used to call it like attunement. And I will attune you to the energy of the Fuck It Diet, which will help you to truly heal. You need me. You really do need me. I mean, this book, I hope this book helps you, but to really do it, to really do any of this stuff, you need me to help you get into your body. It's not true. I mean, obviously you guys know that you were looking for a community. You were looking for more accountability, more clarity. You had questions on how to apply the specific things that I was saying to you and to your journey, which is why that you're here. But so many people and so many diets and so many like self-helpy things, and not all of them. I mean, some of them are amazing and they're meant to give you the tools to the simple tools. But so many of them are like, but you really need me. The only person who needs me is Molly. Look, it's you. Becca says, tell the story, tell us. I don't have it in me today, but I will tell you the story. I promise that. It's very long. It would take a long time. I might need to write it out. Maybe I'll write it out and then I'll elaborate on it in a call. I wonder if I could find it from an early draft of the book. I think I might not have those early drafts, but I'm going to look and see. Okay, I'm going to do that. Yeah, she was like trying to turn it into a multi-level marketing thing. And then everyone, not everyone, but lots of people turned on her. Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right, fine. Come here. Come here. Sit. Yes. She was so a lot of people were like, started to see through it. And there were so many things that she advertised that she was going to teach us that she never taught us. And she was like, no, that's too advanced. That's too advanced. And it was just like all bullshit. She doesn't even do it anymore. We paid so much money to learn to be a practitioner. She just like wanted, it was just, I'll explain it better. But yeah, it was really creepy. And then after I was able to cut ties with her like really well, because she started marketing energy work to lose weight. And I wrote to her, and this is when already like we had a little group of us like talking about how much we didn't trust her. And I was like, I cannot, because the whole idea was like, we had to have our clients click on a link to learn stuff from her. Like it was just so weird. So I had to be directing people to her. She gave us an NDA the morning. I literally flew to England to train with her. And the morning of, she gave us all an NDA that we had to sign right there. And we weren't even able to look over it. And that was like when people were like, oh shit, this woman's crazy. So we were on guard, and then she didn't teach us half of the things she implied she was going to teach us, that she had been like our practitioner, and we loved her. And we thought that what she did was so cool. But then she didn't actually teach us the things that she said she was going to teach us. And she's like, no, that's too advanced. Only I can do that. And then So a couple months later, when I was like, I need to like not be associated with this woman, she sent out an email that was about her new program to help people lose weight with her method. And I was like, this is not a fit for me anymore. I cannot, this is just not in line with what I do. And I was like, thank God. It was like the perfect thing. She never wrote back to me. But like 2 years later, once I had a book deal, she wrote to me, "Oh, Caroline, I didn't get that email from you. I really hope you're doing well. And I wanted to see if there was any way that we could start working together. Um, because I'm doing a program about people healing their relationship with food, which I knew was going to be bullshit. And I would just really, I don't know if there's a way that we can work together." And I was so stressed because one of the things that she taught was lying down flat, but that was already something that I did before her. So I thought that she was going to go after me and say that that's something that she taught me, which is bullshit because it's literally lying down. Because of like the NDA that we didn't even have time. Like I was afraid that she was going to think that I was like stealing that, which is the craziest thing. I could literally say I took this from yoga because I did, and from other things that I had learned before her. But so I was so nervous about like how to get her off my back. And I had to shred all the like materials that she gave me because I didn't want to continue being a practitioner because she was making us pay, which she never told us ahead of time to like continue to like say we were a practitioner in her thing, which just, and so I had to like shred it and like take a video of it. And I have it saved on my computer to this day so I could send it to her. Anyway, she wrote to me and I wrote up this long thing being like, I really like all the reasons that I think she's shady, but I didn't send it. I was advised to just ignore her email like she ignored mine, and I did. And then I had to do energy work and breathe and feel on all my stress from her, which is very ironic. So that's mostly the story, but I'll see if I can find what I wrote for the early draft of the book. And did I delete her thing? I wrote this long thing in my notes, but I might have deleted it in a, oh yeah, I have it for fun, not to send. Do not send, Caroline, do not send. And I wrote this long thing where I like accuse her. I'll share some of this in the group. But I think we should go off into our Saturday. Now, this next week is a light week. So there's no reading assignment. You can catch up on anything you want to catch up on. There's a bonus essay and some bonus prompts, but that's it. I, last minute, am going to drive to the Adirondacks to my friend from college's parents' house on a lake. It's like my favorite place in the world with Molly. He said that Molly's allowed to come, which is like a huge deal. And I'm so excited. I'm driving up tomorrow. So I'm going to spend most of the week there, but I'll be in the group and I'll be doing what I usually do and answering questions and stuff. And then we'll have our call as usual next Saturday. And yeah, as usual, except it's a super light week and there's no reading assignment this week. So does anybody have any last questions before we go off into our week? Oh. Her name was Juniper before I renamed her Molly Weasley. I'm just holding to see if there's any last questions. But I don't know that there is, or that there are. All right, if there are no more questions, I will talk to you this week from the Adirondacks. If you don't know what the Adirondacks are, you don't live in the US. It's upstate New York, and it's just beautiful mountains and lakes, and the weather so much nicer than it is here in Philadelphia. It's going to be like humid and 80s, 90s. It's going to be like cool and like 70 and sunny. Actually, it's going to be raining too, but that's fine. And I'm so excited. It's 6 hours from me. It's really far. But it's beautiful and I must go. And I'm very excited. Thank you guys. Thank you for being live and thank you for watching the replay. And I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.